Talking Allergies is a podcast focused on raising allergy awareness, sharing allergy stories, increasing allergy health and wellbeing, connecting the Australian allergy community with those that support them, and more. In each episode, we look at different aspects of living with allergies, with special guests joining us to talk about all things allergies.
Hi Taryn, and welcome to Talking Allergies. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you, Grace. Great to speak with you.
Great to speak with you too. Could you start by talking a little bit about your allergy experience, Taryn?
My second son has allergies, and it started from more of a skin reaction that he had in his early years, and that sort of led us to be speaking to a dermatologist. But the actual onset or the link of that to his anaphylactic reactions to nuts and various other sort of chickpeas related. So it's quite specific, but it was from an individual experience. We didn't actually know that initially from the onset. It was more of speaking about skin allergies and then the finding out that there is a link to other allergic reactions.
Thank you. Could you talk a little bit more about that link that you were talking about with the chickpeas and then the reactions?
As a parent stepping into the allergy space, it was very focused on his skin, so eczema related, asthma related, and that was our focus, particularly as a young child. And then it came to more later on of actually more feeding a certain meal and then getting a reaction, and then sort of being in a more of an immediate urgent situation. So that particular dish had pine nuts in it, and we had no idea that he was actually allergic to nuts. So it was a hospital scenario, etc. And that obviously then led to other things. But the changes from skin, to then more what they're allergic to, and I'm sure your listeners and others can relate to this, that the changes that go through as the body develops or as they get involved with different foods, or as you're exposing them to different scenarios and social settings, that's sort of been the evolution and the journey that we've gone on from a young baby with skin allergies or impacts, and then leading more into food related. So the skin has now obviously grown out of that, and now it's more into managing the anaphylactic reactions.
When did you first notice the skin reactions?
Yeah, from quite a young age, possibly from even 3 months old, and certainly from an eczema point of view, and then it probably developed quite badly by about 12 months to 18 months old, particularly affecting to environment and heat conditions and all those other sorts of things. So probably from 2 to 3 was when probably eased off a little bit, and it was probably all gone by the time he was about 6.
And when did you learn that they had allergies other than the skin allergies?
Yeah, so it was certainly from that. It was a takeaway dinner, and it was from our local Italian restaurant, chicken pasta dish, and it was a hidden allergy that we didn't know he was allergic to at that time. So it was a pine nut. That was the pine nut scenario. And then that led to further investigation into what other nuts or other things he was allergic to. So sometimes, dairy can come in from eczema, asthma, dairy and nuts. But dairy was eggs he wasn't very, very familiar with, and sometimes we couldn't quite link always that it was directly related to eggs or to other things because of the scenario, but of his skin and environmental factors and those sorts of things. So it's all linked, and I think that was the learning as a parent, that you often address what you need to deal with at that time, and I didn't know back then the links between skin reactions, asthma, environment, and then but more obviously genetic through the allergies, so to nuts and other food products. So, and it's been that journey, I think, of what I've learned, of how it evolves, how it changes, and being comfortable with that. And now as a 15-year-old, he's comfortable with it.
It's fantastic to hear that he's now comfortable with it at 15. With the learning curve of finding out about their allergies, how was that for you?
Yeah, it was very, I mean, it's certainly supportive, from a clinical setting. And I like to speak about it a bit from a clinical and a non-clinical, because often the knowledge that you gain is from a clinical setting, speaking to a doctor, speaking to a dermatologist, possibly speaking to your local pharmacist. And I think my learning is that it probably ideally shouldn't be from a clinical setting. We shouldn't even be put in that situation. If we could know or be exposed or have a broader understanding in a non-clinical, and I speak about non-clinical in terms of our daily life, the way that we eat at restaurants or the way we buy groceries, or even the way from a child's point of view, the way they interact at sports or social settings or community, engagements. All of those are touch points where people need to be aware um, of, and it's getting better, but it's I think that power, if I can use that phrase, I feel like should be back on to the person and the people that are supporting someone living with allergies, rather than being put into settings where it's inconsistent, it's not closely managed, because that responsibility shifts as they get older, and you learn really quickly, especially when you're fully responsible, as parents do. We often learn on the job. And I feel that that was really part of that journey of learning, managing when they're getting a little bit older and being exposed to all different environments and social settings, and your network and your community grows. And then it's really a shift, from that stage to the independence or a form of independence as they become a teenager. So, and that was a real um, transformation to learn, but also have a gain of trust in the foundations that you've set, and in all those different settings, sports, school, social settings, camps, or being invited to other people's houses, trips away, traveling, all of that is different at the moment. And I'd really like to see some consistency there so people can feel more empowered and more comfortable that they're going to be looked after consistently, no matter what setting they're in.
As a mum of a teenage boy, how have you found the transition from primary school to high school?
It was linked to his development, and that was the real key. I think you take on a real education role as a parent, and you're quite protective, I'd say from 6 to 10, when you're still, they maybe don't have that full awareness around them of what might happen. So I took on quite a role to educate Mace and let him be able to comfortably share it. So the transformation, I guess, to jump straight to now, is that if he goes away with his mates or his mates, families, and he gets into other settings, he's very comfortable to say it up front. And I will often have a conversation with the parents prior. And some, in that social setting, some people are really alarmed still. And I think that's, your listeners could relate to that they're a bit like, oh, I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. So there's a role to play as a parent to make sure that others are comfortable with that, and reassure them that I feel confident that he's in their care, and I feel confident that he's also able to know what reactions he has. And that's been our example, that learning journey is really understanding what the triggers are, and how to avoid them. And he does that beautifully by speaking up front and openly.
That's really lovely to hear that he has taken that on board. What would you say to parents that are in that in-between stage and not really knowing whether their kid will look after them or take that responsibility on board?
I try to keep it simple. I try to not overwhelm them of what the situation may be. An anaphylactic situation, is minutes, and it can be overwhelming. But certainly that education of Mason is fully aware of it. He's comfortable to talk about it. He will share it with you. Please be reassured he will speak to you if there is anything going on. And in that setting, immediately call an ambulance, and Mason will share with you where his EpiPen is at all times, the time that he's in your care. And it's the same in a sports setting, even to jump away from it being from a travel situation. Now they're actually asking that an EpiPen is in, say, a football coach's box. They've actually got a medical kit, and they're now asking anyone that has got allergic reactions, is that an EpiPen must be right beside the coaches, the team manager. So once again, huge responsibility as a voluntary team manager. They're taking on that role from the registration, pre-training, and then getting all that set up, and they're enforcing it. They're actually saying, if you don't have this on board for the game, then the child can't play. So obviously larger organisations are starting to take this more seriously, and in my opinion, so they should, because the responsibility needs to be shared. Yeah.
It's also a really great way of having a safe football experience too.
I guess, in this setting, it may be, a consumption of anything else. I guess they're protecting, it may be oranges or things like that are other food related that could impact someone. So it's a great shift. It's not consistent, but that was, I guess, a level of awareness across organisations. And I see that as part of the ecosystem, whether it's a manufacturer, whether it's a sporting organisation, whether it's your workplace, whether it's your school, the consistency and that role to play, so that as children or as parents, you know exactly what you've got to do. You're not trying to do it differently. And I do find that in this day and age, we have so much life admin, and dealing with allergies can also be an extra layer of responsibility and coordination to make sure that all the forms are in place. Everything knows the procedures. They know what Mason's going to react, and that takes a little bit of setup at the start of the year. So I do find the start of the year can be quite overwhelming in that way.
100% the start of every year of talking about the allergies, their reactions, with everyone new is a really big task.
Yeah, that's right. And I think that's, for me in my setting, I still take on that responsibility. So the shift of Mason's independence has certainly grown, and he can take on a certain portion of that. But certainly as a parent, I still like to reassure him that the peripheral and everything else around it is there for him to enjoy life in every setting.
Of course, looking at the people that are responsible for them in school and you at home, making sure you're on the same page is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And some people, their level of understanding of that, can be quite rigid, and from paperwork, and they feel like there's actually, reports into government as well of the processes and the workflows and things that they have in place. And others, it's a much more personable, relationship, back to sort of the team manager example. So it can be quite different.
Definitely. Thank you. Are there situations or reactions that you would like to share?
I have had varied, and in each situation, it's actually been related to different scenarios. And this is something that I think I'm passionate about. We often think about allergies of how is a school handling it for a child, or how is the childcare place handling it. But my experience is it's so much broader. And this one was a family holiday in Bondi in Sydney. We'd been at the beach all during the day. It was actually my birthday. We were having a beach morning and then going out for lunch with family who were also interstate. So quite a memorable day was planned. But after the beach, we thought we'd grab an ice cream just before we got ready for lunch with the kids. Typical, family thing to do on a hot day. And this ice cream store had only sort of just recently opened their doors. I think they'd probably been open for a short time. And Mason safely went for vanilla ice cream. So, and everyone else sort of chose their chosen flavour. I can say literally within 20 seconds of walking out of the store, he'd taken one or two licks and immediately knew that it wasn't right. He was already getting reactions from it, which were more of an anaphylactic reaction. And he immediately came and said, "Mum, this is not right. This is something's happening." Luckily, we lived and had accommodation very close nearby, and so we went straight home and met ambulance. And trying to get an ambulance through Bondi is in the peak of summer was probably my concern, but they managed to get there. But that situation was that a small business had thought that they wanted to try to have a point of difference in an ice cream store, and have a healthy version. And the base of their ice cream, which we found out after being in hospital for 6 to 8 hours and multiple EpiPens and adrenaline, was that they wanted to use a cashew base in their ice cream, and were mortified at themselves once they sort of found out about it. And it really made me, I did have some empathy for them, but it also, from a parent point of view, saying, how is this happening? How are these businesses, why aren't the regulations in place to try to do it? But, changed our day, changed the memory, and one of those situations that thankfully everything was okay. So I've sort of got just a couple of different stories. If you'd like, I can sort of keep sharing from
Of
a
course, if you would
personal.
like to.
It's not great that they're stories of anaphylactic, but it's something I really am passionate about, because it's not from a business point of view. It's also from a personal. During COVID, I thought, trying to create memories with the kids and create something different in a house where we were locked down in Melbourne, and the movies, a bit of a movie night and a theme of showing the kids a movie that I enjoyed as a child and bring in all the treats that I enjoyed. And one of them was a caramelized popcorn that I always enjoyed when I was younger. And we got it, and we had it in the pantry for quite some time, sort of waiting to plan this movie night. And I stepped out for a walk, and my husband had actually grabbed the popcorn and set the kids up. It was just the right time to do it, and gave them a small bowl of this popcorn. The packaging on this popcorn hadn't changed. That was part of the sort of historical part of it, saying this hasn't changed in 20 years, And that particular popcorn had changed, with not much particular emphasis on it being now a peanut caramel coated popcorn. So once again, we were in a anaphylactic situation with an ambulance. And it just really shows that sometimes the link to manufacturing or to branding or to packaging and those sorts of things plays a big role in people that live with allergies. And having it more front and centre is something that I think would bring, to speak about power, you'd be able to make selections, make decisions, make things much more easier, and avoid some of these complicated, situations. So, once again, I think for my son and for your listeners, the importance of really having that relationship and giving your child the confidence to tap into the feelings that they're having if they are having a reaction has been pivotal in some of my situations. And also the extended family with that particular situation, in trying to get an ambulance to a house, make sure that they could find the house in a timely manner, keeping my son calm. We also had a younger son at the time, so this was a very different experience for them. But I would say as a family, that's the importance of us all understanding the situation and understanding how calm and how the result can be. And I think that was what everyone rallied around. And I think my son, who is living with allergies, has that good memory around it, so it doesn't become a fearful situation.
Touching on the aspect of understanding what symptoms that they're going through and having that bounce back is really important during those emergency situations. Oh, I'm feeling this. What's going on? I think that's really important for Mason, and a great dialogue between you two.
These stories and personal circumstances have shaped the way that I view allergies and being a parent of someone living with allergies. And I feel that for many of your listeners, and I've heard some other stories of how people are trying to manage it and build confidence and educate, their friends, and it's quite a role. And this scenario was at a local Italian, a mother and son dinner. Occasionally I try to get that one-on-one time and take them out for a local Italian meal. And we shared our main meal, and then, we had our main meal and then shared a dessert. Mason likes chocolate pudding, as I do, and we went to the extra length at that point we'd already shared that Mason had allergies for the main meal. But for this one occasion, and it was a bit unique, we actually went to that level again for dessert and said, just to make sure this is just a, chocolate pudding. Certainly on the menu, the description, chocolate pudding with a chocolate sauce with, strawberries, etc. And we probably pushed the question, and it might be a bit of an irony, but the waitress went and checked with the chef, and the chef actually shared that he had included hazelnuts within the chocolate sauce, and it wasn't printed in the menu or shared in that way. So that was a situation that we avoided purely by asking questions. And I know a lot of people living with allergies are going through that. And it's really the importance there, the scale from a business owner, the chef, the education of the actual staff member, the responsibility on them. And I feel for them, because if that had been served, that could have changed the situation, not only personally for us, but also for their restaurant, of anyone, being in that scenario. And that's something that I'm conscious of. People are out trying to have memories, good memories, and these situations should just be avoided. And luckily that was avoided.
It's fantastic that it was avoided at that point.
Absolutely. And I know for many, asking the questions or feeling comfortable with the waiter or the business owner or particular cafes that you're going through, it does highlight the difference and the varied way that people are communicating what ingredients are in certain services or products or things that you're purchasing. And from a hidden ingredients, from my example of the packaging with the popcorn, to that sort of life experience in a restaurant, it's still quite hidden. And our role at this stage, with the ecosystem probably not really in our favour, is to keep asking the questions and make sure that you as a family member and your child are educated, are confident, and keep them comfortable with how they can approach this, because it certainly needs to take a shift and allow people to live safely in every situation.
Is there any other situation or reaction that you would like to talk about?
So this was a situation I'd actually had. My mum organised a surprise baby shower with some girlfriends, and the caterer that supported it was a bit of a high tea type scenario. Lovely setting, lovely moment, and we certainly enjoyed the day. And it was some leftover cakes that we took home that night. And it was my son the next day. He said, "Oh, Mum, I see there's a bit of a chocolate again." He's obviously got a bit of a thing for chocolate slice. And I gave him the tiniest little bit, because it was quite a rich, dense type of cake. I gave the tiniest bit, and just for a taste. And once again, immediately he had a reaction on his tongue. And it highlighted that situation was, we had actually had 10 people around that day eating these cakes and enjoying them. But when it came to one person that's got allergies, it wasn't disclosed what the ingredients were, fully. And it's another way of those ingredients are hidden. And I felt probably a little bit silly in that way, that you probably should have been getting a list of the ingredients and things like that to give it to Mason. I'm probably keen to share that we need to be kind to ourselves, because there's been a few scenarios that we don't always get it right. And as a parent, this was one of those scenarios that I felt pretty ordinary about. But it did highlight, once again, that's a cake shop working with maybe a boutique, provider, cake provider, and that chain from them placing an order, promoting these products, displaying these products for sale, and then us actually consuming it. It's a trail. It can just keep going. And that was an example of the leftovers falling into the hands of someone with an allergy, and there was minimal exposure throughout all of those touch points.
And also, managing allergies is every day, every moment. It's not just a few aspects through the year, it's every day. So it makes sense.
Yeah, that's right. And I think you get through those situations, and it's another learning curve, but it ideally shouldn't be a learning curve in that scenario. But the stories that I've shared today have shaped the way that I now think about it, because it's not just what you're feeding or what you're sharing with others. And I've even had people say, from a cultural perspective, if they're wanting to host a dinner party and have got people from different cultures and maybe what they're allergic to or what they don't want to eat, is also part of this, hidden ingredients. So I think there's varying aspects to it. But from my personal experiences and from sort of a business point of view and an ecosystem point of view, I've had multiple touch points where it's not just on myself. I think the responsibility can be shifted.
Speaking about hidden ingredients, could you give more of a definition or a little bit more of an explanation around that?
Yeah. Can I just start by saying, with my eyesight slightly deteriorating, reading packaging is really challenging these days. And I often, am asking for someone else to look at it. And I really would like to have that a bit more front and centre. I know it's shifting a little bit with gluten and, things in the supermarket are being a bit more positioned. But it's getting harder. And things that may have traces, that I think that's extended now. I'm seeing may have traces of peanuts, but it also may have traces of 8 different items. I think that's pretty loose in my personal opinion, but it's something that I think can be simplified and make it easier for people to shop, or make it easier for people to understand what they're consuming.
We've touched a lot on the situations and the reactions. Could you talk a little bit about the allergies that Mason does have?
Mason initially was diagnosed with nuts, dairy and eggs, particularly with pistachio nuts and chickpeas. So we sort of managed it from a point of view that nuts in general, and we got him regularly checked, and it was not much changed in the first point, but the second, which was probably around when he was around 7, actually highlighted that some of the nuts dropped off and when he was no longer allergic to those. And eggs was minimal, and it would be encouraged for him to trial it, which I think they've actually tried to say that you need to try to keep feeding the system and feeding the body to try to get over some of these allergies, and that can be quite confronting as a parent as well. But that did work, and it did change, and we sort of drip fed that into his diet. We also, the story of walking out of the dermatologist and being told that he no longer no longer was allergic to hazelnuts. And I took him to there's a little chocolate again. This is a theme of chocolate all the way through this. I'm realising a little chocolate shop near our place, and he bravely walked in and actually purchased a tiny little square of chocolate with a hazelnut in it. And that was a way of us celebrating that he was actually over this. We'd had it clinically confirmed, and he actually lived and breathed that experience. And that was really important to mark that as a milestone, to help him get over anything else. So that's now he's mainly living with pistachio, cashew, and peanuts. He does still generally tend to avoid other nuts, but has occasionally dabbled into the hazelnut walnut space.
Thank you for clarifying what their allergies are and how it's changed through the years too.
Yeah, I think that's a point of it was probably driven by him as well. That am I still allergic to everything? Being told at the age of 3, I didn't necessarily know it would change so much by the time he was 8 or 9, and that was an important step, I think, to be able to actually listen to him. I really want to know, Mum, am I still allergic to all of these things? So going back to those regular checkups, or even when he was curious, was a way of building confidence as well.
Talking about management of allergies every day, What does that look like for you and Mason?
Yeah, certainly. In high school setting, it's he carries his own medical, satchel, basically with an EpiPen. He's actually got to a point where he would administer it himself if he was in any scenario. And the school setting is quite regimented in terms of paperwork, and they actually request for 2 EpiPens within the health centre. So that could be different in different school settings, which I think that transformation from maybe being a parent and having a closer contact to a school in a primary setting, and that independence, as I spoke about before, was quite a shift, and something that I had to personally, let go of and trust the school, trust Mason. I encouraged him to actually share with his close group of mates and let his mates know that he's actually got a medical satchel in his bag. So if he's in any scenario, it could also be extended. That word of mouth can be really powerful in those situations.
If you don't mind me asking, what is in that medical satchel?
Just so Claritine, like an antihistamine, and the EpiPen, and a copy of his actual, plan, so to speak.
Sounds like a great kit to carry around.
Probably not one that he always wants to, but knowing that he's got it and he can confidently be in a setting. And some of these school grounds, they could be quite large. So from an oval setting to then getting to a health centre, if there's any way that it can be a quicker scenario and someone else can help, that's the goal.
Is there something that you've learned about living with allergies that you would like to tell someone who's at the beginning of their journey?
It is a medical, clinical type, setting that you will find yourself in. The education that I took was certainly taking the word from the specialists and really understanding it, and then going away and doing a lot of reading myself. I think this setting with Allergy Life Australia and the community is a great way, to learn from others, because every allergy and every reaction, I think, would be different. And everyone, the stories are similar, but also, very personalised. So I've spoken probably a bit about the confidence and the education of each family member. I've actually got a younger son, a younger sibling, and so the role even to make him not feel fearful. Sometimes he's like, "Oh, we can't do that because that'll be Mason might have a reaction," and it's like, no, he won't have a reaction. And it's really the different education levels that you have within a family basically extend to your broader network, and that's now for our community and our friends and our family. They're all comfortable with that in a setting.
That's fantastic that you've gone through the education of everyone around them, but also Mason's sibling as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was something that popped up. It probably wasn't something that I saw coming, because I thought I'd sort of probably gone through that stage. And his younger siblings, 8, and the more I'm speaking about it, and the more I'm sort of passionate in this space, that the power of everyone being able to help each other from a business school life setting has probably triggered some of those thoughts. But it opens conversations, and I'm able to inform him and reassure him.
Is there anything else that you would like to say to the allergy community or in general?
I think this is a great community network, and I think from a parent's point of view, be kind to yourself. I have shared, an example today, but be kind to yourself as you're learning and growing in this space. It does change, and have your checkpoints that you want to be able to feel reassured, or have your family member or friend reassured. I would also say, please, keep thinking about how every business or every touch point that you have in life can be consistent, and the power of being able to manage your allergies or your family's allergies consistently can change. It doesn't have to be just with us as parents or as people, as individuals. It can be supported in other ways, and the more you speak about it, the more it goes on. I even spoke to an emergency doctor one time who felt that even through the triage system, to be able to see the history of someone living with allergies, often they're just presented in an emergency situation. But it's like any other medical history, and I'd like to sort of see it treated and exposed a bit more like that.
Thank you so much, Taryn. Appreciate your time today in talking about your own experience, Mason's experience, and also about hidden ingredients. Very important.
Yeah, thanks very much for your time, Grace. Thanks for having me on the show.
The discussions on Talking Allergies are here to support you or your loved one on your journey with allergies. The topics discussed here are not intended as medical instruction or as a substitute for advice by a qualified healthcare provider.